Great. Okay, we're officially calling to order the special meeting of the Municipal Accountability Review Board for Thursday, August 13th at 10:30 a.m. I'm glad to have at least 5 of our MARB board members on, and I'm glad that you are doing well and in good health. We have a very short agenda before us today to address the Allentown firefighters tentative agreement. But before we begin, we have the approval of the minutes for June 22nd, 2020. Is there a motion for the approval of the minutes?
Christine
David
Shaw.
Second it.
I believe we had Christine Shaw that moved the motion. And was that Mr. Biller who seconded?
Yes. Yes.
Excellent. Okay, it's moved and seconded. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none. Julian, can you please do a roll call?
Mr. White? Aye.
Mr. Waxenberg?
Yes.
Mr. Biller?
Yes.
Ms. Shaw?
Yeah.
Mr. Brockman?
Yes.
Secretary McCaw?
I'll be abstaining as I was not present.
Are there any other board members who have joined that I did not just mention? Okay, thank you. That's everybody. 5.
Okay. All right,
2,
very
1.
good. All right, so moving on to the main agenda item for today, which is review, discussion, and possible action on the Arlington firefighters tentative agreement. Let me first begin by updating the committee that we did have a scheduled special meeting of the subcommittee from 10 to 10:30 to review the TA and to take possible action. We thought we had a quorum based on those that confirmed attendance. We did not, and so therefore the subcommittee meeting was not convened. Our bylaws do not require that the subcommittee take action, but obviously we try to do so that we can vet it in detail before it comes to the full board. However, due to not having a quorum, we did not convene as we could not take action. So the review and discussion on this TA is the first that any members of the MARB have participated in, and I want to advise you of that accordingly. So now let's move into reviewing the tentative agreement for the Arlington firefighters. Just by way of background, I just want to remind everyone that in April 2019, MARB approved a contract for the Arlington firefighters with a contract term of July 1, 2017 through June 30th, 2022. The contract had expired June 30th, 2017, and the union had been without a contract for more than a year. Some of the major provisions of that contract that was approved in April 2019 include 4 years of zero, so for fiscal year 18, 19, 20, and 21, unions and management agreed to 0% for general wage increases, and in the final year of the contract, fiscal 22, a 1% raise. In addition, regarding health insurance, the employee contribution was increased from 11 to 12% in fiscal 21, 12 to 13% in fiscal 22, along with agreement to transition to a high deductible health plan for insurance. If you are not talking and you could mute, that would be great. Thank you.
Excuse me, just to mute, you press *6, and to unmute, you would press *6 also. Thanks.
Thank you, Julian.
You've been muted. To unmute yourself, press *6.
On July 15th, MARB has 44 days, similar to the local legislative body, to approve or reject the tentative agreement, or we could take no action, which would equate to approval. The 45 days means that we would have to do so by August 28th, and you should know that City Council approved the contract on July 27th. So with that, I'm actually going to turn it over to the city to provide a summary of TA, and then we'll open it up for discussion.
Thank you. Hi, good morning. This is Chris Hodgson. I apologize if I held anyone up. I was in the wrong meeting.
No problem. Welcome, sir.
As of this year, thanks, Melissa. As of this year, this union was the only city union that was not in the state partnership plan. So we proposed to them that they switch to the state partnership plan. This contract requires that they mutually agree to any switch. It does not have language saying that the city can provide a equal to or better than medical plan, so we bargained with them. They agreed to switch to the state partnership effective July 1, 21, and in exchange, we added a year to the contract. The contract extension provides for a 2% general wage increase effective July 1, 22, and at the same time, an increase to the premium share from 13% to 14%. So that's also July 1, 22. We also agreed to increase EMT paramedic stipends by $200 in 2021 and by $200 in 2022. The 2% general wage increase is consistent with the city's 5-year plan, and you can see the revised financial impact indicates for fiscal year 22, the impact is just the increase in the stipends of $3,800. And then in fiscal year 23, the healthcare contribution increase is $20,561 against a wage increase of 2% of $15,583. And then there's some additional costs for the stipends, so the net cost to the city is $2,622. Do you have any questions?
Thank you very much, Chris. So a couple things before I open it up to MARB committee members. The financial estimate that you were referencing is the one that was distributed by Julian, MARB members. And this is comparing the financial impact of the contract changes to the plan that we approved, their financial plan for the city. We often not only like to look at a comparison against the plan, but what was the total net cost or savings of this tentative agreement. So a couple things I want to ask and clarify. Number one of the exhibits where you costed out the 2% increase, it reflected a full cost of $28,514 for the 2% GWI and $12,409 for the step impact of the 2%. So in terms of the total salary-related impact, you got a $28,000 cost, almost a $13,000 cost on the steps, along with $3,600 and $4,000 for the stipend increase. Do I understand that correctly?
I would defer to Frank on that.
Julian worked it up.
Okay, Frank?
You are no longer muted.
Yes, good morning. Yes, those are the numbers that Julie and I worked up and went over.
Okay. So the total salary-related impact is about $57,523 based on the documents you provided. The $28,514 for GWI, the $12,409 for STEP, and the 2 stipend increases. Now, with respect to the healthcare contribution change, offsetting that $57,000 in cost is the $20,000 in savings for healthcare contribution, is my understanding, correct?
Yes.
All right. And then with respect to the shift to the partnership plan, the last update that we had received from the city indicated that it would be slightly more costly to move from the HDHP to the partnership plan. Is that still the city's position on the move to the partnership plan?
I believe those numbers were given to us by Lockton. I have not seen anything from the initial analysis that they did when we were looking to move last year.
Okay. So I guess I was looking for the city to clarify if it's more costly to move to the partnership plan, did you build yourself some flexibility to make that decision for July 1 as opposed to moving over to a more costly plan? Or are you landing with it's a de minimis increase?
Lee Tiernan, good morning, everyone. So when we analyze this, you got the fire union is a small group, and although you could pare it out and say, even if there is a slight increased cost here, we're looking at the global view of going to the partnership plan, and obviously the Board of Ed, we don't want any arguments that we left anybody behind, and that's an argument to not go to the partnership plan. So we thought that consistency had value, even if not a dollar value. Any increase would be minor, but also with this, we got an increase in the cost share as well. So we feel pretty comfortable about it. Partnership plan costs going forward, it's a little bit of a nebulous thing. So, but based on the figures, it's probably in the end, it might be a slight increase. Again, it depends on who we have on the force and their needs and whatever, but in the end, we still think if we're going to go full-blown to partnership, we don't want anybody left behind because we don't want an argument that that is a viable option. We would rather that all groups feel we all have, it's all together or none together kind of situation. Because the larger group gets us the savings. Larger groups coming into the partnership definitely get us savings. The smaller groups, it is harder, and it depends on who's in the group.
Great. I have a couple of other questions, but I want to open it up to the other MARB members so they can get their questions in.
This is Mark.
Hey, Mark, give the floor.
Hi. Let me preface, hopefully it doesn't take too long, but I've done extensive analysis of this, and let me preface my remarks by saying that I've been a union negotiator and advocate for over 45 years, so, I have a pretty good background when it comes to this type of discussions and or arbitrations, even with representing unions. And to say the least, this is troubling, even as a union advocate. You have a town that has a mill rate that, when you combine the Allentown mill rate with the town's mill rate, it's in the top 5. You have a MARB community. You have a mill rate of the Allentown Fire Department of 14.02, which is 27.2% of the total budget, which is the highest in the state. You have a car mill rate of 8, which is 17.8% of the total car tax, which is the highest in the state. You have an OPEB liability of $198 million for 33 retirees, with a new evaluation coming out, I believe, in September for MARB to look at. The previous 2 other fire districts, which are in trouble, to say considerable trouble, have a $43 million OPEB liability and a $33 million OPEB liability for much larger retirees. You have a fully funded pension system at 25.3%. And as the Secretary mentioned, the actual increase is over $40,000 for this renegotiated agreement, or 3% for fiscal year 23. The existing GWI, which is 1%, really isn't 1%. It's actually 3%. And if you add the new position that we just got yesterday, you're at 6.7% for next year. So, just for a couple observations, in addition, there's no analysis of premium savings from the HTP plan to the state plan, which is problematic. And before I go on further on observations, Article 29 of the contract says that you have to notify in writing 150 days prior to the expiration date of this existing contract of an intent to renegotiate. Was there a written request to renegotiate? And if so, on that written request, was there a a statement saying that should the parties not be able to agree, that they will revert back to the original contract without going to arbitration in accordance with MARB. Is there any such document that exists with this reopener?
Hi, it's Chris Hodgson. No, we didn't treat it as a reopener per se when we asked the union to switch to state partnership. Originally, it was going to be for this July 1, but the timing of it just didn't make sense to move them in. We did not formally reopen the contract. Just when they had asked if we could extend it by a year and asked for a 2% general wage increase, that we agreed because it was consistent with the 5-year plan, and this union had already taken 4 years of no wage increases.
Not being argumentative, but 4 years of GWI is not 4 years of no wage increase, because you had people along the lanes getting money, but you had stipending.
Absolutely.
You had stipends and you had overtime, which is a separate issue. So that is perplexing to me, because should MARB reject, I don't think you're in trouble under MARA, but it should have, in my mind, should have been handled a little differently to make sure that both management and labor were able to go back to their original positions should MARB reject, and it could get confusing should MARB reject, which I will be encouraging them to do. But that said, if you look at the comparison with Hartford that was given to us last night, a quick examination shows that Hartford, which is really the true comparison, because Hartford's the only other.
You've been muted. To unmute yourself, press *6.
Was under state guidance. This is the second time in the pool. But that said, Hartford really restructured its whole fire department. If I was in the union, I'd be really perplexed by it. But that said, the union did agree to significant alterations in the area of salaries and the area of healthcare, which is not even close to what West Haven did, which we approved, which is fine, but going forward should be examined. And this would foreclose us examining that 1 year, and it would be a continuation of problems in my mind. Focusing on salaries, in reality, doing an examination of the salary data that I have from them, there's over 50% of the present firefighters that make over $100,000 a year, combined with overtime and stipends. So from a total salary perspective, it's consistent with other departments. So I'm not saying that West Hartford is unique. As a matter of fact, other departments are probably are a lot greater. But I don't want to give the impression that there is a set, like teachers, there is a set salary that they get, and that's it, walking out the door. There are opportunities for enhancing the salary based on availability of overtime and stipends. And in the salary data that was provided to me by Allentown, those stipends were not added to the annual salary, but in my computation, I would say the range for salaries is from $74,000 to $112,000, and that was for 2018 and 19. Now, the health insurance, which I find to be the renegotiated language, which I find to be troublesome, is the new language says they go from the President HD high deductible health care plan to the state partnership plan. But should West Haven go back to or want to leave the partnership plan? It's not renegotiable as to what plan they go into. They go into a PPO, which is a Cadillac plan. They don't even go back to the high deductible health care plan. So what you have here is a significant benefit to the union employee, which is fine. I don't have a problem being a unionist, but from a management perspective, which is not unfortunately, but the hat that I'm wearing today, you're saying if we leave one plan, we go back to a Cadillac when I'm driving a Ford right now. So that's problematic. And again, there's no cost share analysis. Now, on the retiree side, I'm going as quickly as I can. in my mind, when I read this, is total confusion. At present, under the present plan that we approved previously, all new hires go to basically get the exact plan that the actives have, and they go to Medicare. That's the way I read the present contract language. It's totally confusing as to the actives right now and the retirees right now. Because if you look at the retirees, they are costing $788,000 in premiums versus $490 for the actives for 33 members in the retiree group. So nobody is on the Medicare. They're all getting, there's no Medicare supplement being paid for. They're all not taking Medicare. Or paying for Medicare. They're all getting health insurance provided by West Haven, paid for by West Haven, with a premium share ranging from 0% to 11%, depending upon when they retired.
You are no longer muted.
Medicare piece is confusing. I got it for the new hires, but it's very confusing for the existing staff, what benefit they get when they retire, because there's no dates in the contract. It's a weird, it's upon ratification, et cetera, when there should be a date in there. But, and that's for 1819, which is an issue. On the pension side, they went from a defined benefit to a defined contribution, and I don't know the impact that this has on the pension because it's a closed system. But I don't know, it's not marked as to what the contribution is. What are the years to retire in West Haven? I know in Hartford it's 25 and then the new hires are 35. I have no idea what the retiree age is or years of service is for the active, for the new, either at the present or the new hires. So it's just totally, you know, when you get a pension, a fully funded pension of 25%, you would like to know exactly what the pension plan says. And instead of going from of course this was previously done, instead of going from, like in Hartford, where they tiered the defined benefit plan, they didn't do away with the defined benefit plan, they tiered it. You went directly from a defined benefit to a defined contribution. I don't know what the contribution is. I don't know, does the city contribute anything towards the plan? But again, that's something that is troublesome. And the other areas that are not necessarily involved in this opener that I reviewed in the contract that deal with totally ambiguous language, vacation pay, sick day pay, special leave. They mention when a person retires, what's the criteria for retirement? I'm here 5 years. I say I'm going to retire. I get all my sick day pay up to 120 days. So those are not before us today, but they would be before us in the next contract, or before the negotiators in the next contract, to clean up what I can see a contract that's been a handshake and a wink for the past X amount of years. The city took on a significant liability when they took on this Allentown Fire District. For whatever reason they did it, and that's water over the dam, so to speak. But to continue a liability that this does, I don't think MARB is here for that purpose. We've taken a very strong position on the city and how it treats itself systemically and in the future regarding its expenditures, its books, its human relation, HR, etc. Yet what's before us is an extension that doesn't do the same for the one fire district that it has control over. It's just a continuation of the same old, same old. The exhibits are erroneous. as the secretary alluded to, so they mean nothing when it comes to changes to the 5-year plan. It's, for me, if this was a straight swap, as Attorney Tiernan said, a straight swap of the state plan for the high deductible plan, which in my mind is a much better plan between the two for the union employees. Straight swap with a % increase in premium share, even though it's lower than Hartford. Hartford is 18%, they're at 14%. I could probably vote for it. But, to say that we're trading a movement from a high deductible plan to a better plan, and we're going to pay for it by increasing stipends as well as giving a 2% salary increase plus increment, when there hasn't been an analysis of the total contract. I unfortunately, and again, being a person with a background that I have, I can't do it. I just can't do it. If it was before me was, like I said, if they chose to come back with a straight swap with no extension of the contract, A for B, which is something that I believe in the state plan significantly. I believe in that concept. I would be probably first in line depending upon the fiscal impact, but I agree with Attorney Tiernan. Fiscal impact would probably be minuscule, even if it was on the plus side based on the group number. But that's not what's before us. So what's before us, to me, is inconclusive, and unfortunately, and I really say unfortunately, I can't support it.
Thank you very much, Mark. City of West Haven, do you care to respond to Mr. Waxenberg?
Yeah, I'd like to make a couple points.
Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
Lee, you want to go first?
No, go ahead. I'll go after you.
I would just make the point. Okay, just a couple points. One is, sir, your points are well taken. In some respects, the city has worked hard to bring down costs. In terms of the comparison with the city of Hartford, we did the 4 years of zero as well, and the fact is, Hartford's contract expired. We don't know what wage increase they're going to get this year, but the 2% that the city has in the TA for 2023 fiscal year is the 5-year plan that we have agreed to, and we're simply implementing it. So if we refuse to give them a raise in year 5 of that plan, I don't know how we would do it, interest arbitration, because the other unions are going to get that raise. And that was the idea to these unions, was to say, take your zeros, and at the end you're going to get a 1% and a 2%. And we're following that formula. That's all I have.
Great. And this is Secretary McClaw. Chris, thank you for your remarks. I just want to clarify a couple of things for Hartford. While Hartford did have 4 years of successful 0%, I think the point that Mr. Waxenberg is trying to make, and I was going to hit some of these points, is that when we think about a municipality that is in distress and we're using all of the available tools to restructure, it appears that the City of West Haven was not as comprehensive in its approach. And some of the things that Mark raised are in the area of, looking at retiree health. Hartford did move to flat monthly stipends, to more other modifications that I don't see that the City of West Haven delved into some of those other areas of the contract, as well as looking at some of the sick leave payouts at retirement, all items that contribute to the financial challenges that the City of West Haven is facing. And while you might only come in $2,600 higher than your plan, at the end of the day, this is a municipality that cannot currently stand on its 2 feet without state support. And the goal of this committee is to help West Haven get to a place of stability. And so, therefore, as we have approved more extensive measures in other cities to observe a TA that it is not continuing to make as meaningful progress is something that I will say as chair is a missed opportunity, and it is precisely what it is. That is precisely what we've been charged to do. So I do think that there's some areas that were missed. In this particular case, the 2% for a richer plan, I don't see that as very balanced. I would recognize, however, that in any negotiation of the contract or the contract beyond fiscal 2022, it is not sustainable to continue to see zeros and 1%. So, from the perspective of union, I'm sympathetic to that. I think realistically, it can't go that long without, a reasonable increase. But that being said, that comes with some give in other areas that I don't see the city having explored. So those are just some of my thoughts in response to your remarks. Is there other discussion? I know, Mark, you were long-winded but thorough. I want to make sure other members have an opportunity to weigh in here.
This is Sal Luciano. Can I make a comment?
Yes, sir. You have the.
Okay, so they took 4 years of zeros. I don't have a problem with the raise. I also think that if the partnership plan is a little bit more expensive than the HSA was last year, it probably isn't much more expensive than the HSA this year. HSAs long-term end up being more expensive than PPOs because they keep the employees away from their doctors. We found that out with the state of Connecticut, which is why encouraging people to see their primary care physician has saved so much money. So I don't have a problem with that either. The one point that I think Mark raises, and it's a very valid point, is when you close a pension system, now you can't assume a rate of return of 5 or 6%. You have to assume a rate of return for the rest of the people who are on the pension at like 2%. And so that 4% difference, if you didn't cost that out, that's going to be the real budget buster that I see.
Thank you, Sal.
This is Bob White. Mark, thank you so much. I thought this was just a formality because of.
You've been muted. To unmute yourself, press *6.
Be opposed to this is what we've already talked about is that West Haven, with the fire department extra taxes, are at the top. And you've just outlined a lot of issues, especially on retirement, and as elucidated by Sal. And we're missing an opportunity. In fact, we're kicking it down the road for one more year. I agree that, in another contract, 2% is not going to make me, crazy. But I really think that it would be wrong to kick it down the road for another year without teeing up the negotiation in 2022. I think perhaps we should give the city some guidance, some of our thoughts ahead of time, so that the negotiators aren't, looking blind. But I absolutely agree. The department is a drag on the city financially, and I think it would be wrong to kick it down the road. So I agree with Mark.
Thank you very much, Mr. Boyd. Is there any other discussion?
I was just going to make.
City of West Haven, did we give you a chance to?
You are no longer muted.
That you have a chance to weigh in further.
Yeah, a couple things. I'll try to be quick, Secretary McCaw. With respect to all the panel members, I don't think you value the 401k switch, which we made both in the fire and police, which virtually no towns have done, which on the police side took 2 arbitrations to get, which you are always talking about how West Haven should think about its future liabilities. That's eliminating a future pension liability. And, when you compare us to other towns, you seem to give that really short shrift that other towns haven't done that. And now you're even suggesting that it's counterintuitive, that it's even going to be more expensive when we're eliminating a future liability by doing it. So that's a little confusing from our side on that one point. We do contribute, the city generally contributes in the Allentown Fire 9% to the 401k. And in exchange for that, we have no liability for that individual going forward. As for retiree health benefits, Mr. Wackman's correct that we're in the position where we have to offer carrots to try to convert people in this union and other unions, retirees, to the Medicare system. We have begun to be successful in that endeavor. We're doing it on an individual by individual basis. In some instances, we got to, offer some carrots, as I've said, in order to get that change. But we're not sitting on our hands not doing that change. And that is not something you can necessarily do with this contract. The retirees, they get the benefit of the contract they retired on. We could have made this a more full-blown contract negotiation, I suppose. The target goals were the two I listed, which was an increased premium share and going to the partnership plan, which we thought going back through 18 months of minutes with MARB was an important ingredient. But, everybody's a critic, I guess, but there is a union side, there is a city side. We could try to get a lot of things in union contracts, but we wanted those two things now. We've the cost factor, it's already encompassed in our 5-year plan. So with respect, I think there's a benefit to the city to getting this contract. And look, if you go back, I don't know, should we renegotiate and go away from 401ks, which is counterintuitive to what the entire country's doing in terms of pension liability? I don't know. I think on balance, this is a good deal for the city. Is it a perfect deal? It's never a perfect deal. You have two sides and you have two interests. If we're going to go back and get a more full-blown deal, I just hope the timing is right for them to enter the partnership plan, and I also hope it doesn't harm our ability to get the Board of Ed to go into the partnership plan.
Thank you, Attorney Siri.
This is Luciano.
Great. I think did I hear Ms. Shaw? Are you trying to jump in there?
Yes, I am. Thank you, Secretary McCaw. I just wanted to register my concern with the disconnect between the data, the savings estimates that were described at the outset of this call and some of the underlying material. I too echo the gratitude to Mark for laying out and sharing with the board the benefit of his experience in negotiating similar agreements and some of the trouble points here. Whether or not this is good for the city, I mean, it's not a matter of whether it's the union side or perspective or the city side. The numbers ought to square. And so I would like to press for kind of a reconciling of the numbers, particularly as they relate to the financial impact on the city.
Thank you, Mr. Luciano.
So if I can just go back to the pension. So West Virginia did the same thing. They thought if they could put the...
You've been muted. To unmute yourself, press *6.
It would. 50 years from, or 40 years from when they did it. But the problem was when they closed the pension system, they could not assume a rate of return of 6 or 7%. They had to assume a rate of return at about 2.25 or 2.5%. And now with the interest rates the way they are, that's probably much less. So unless you have somebody actually looking at it, yes, it is counterintuitive. I agree with that. And yes, West Haven probably would save money well down the road, but short term, where they really need it, I didn't hear any financial numbers or anybody that can prove that, number one. And then number two, beyond that, I'm afraid you're going to do with the firefighters what you did with the police, which is essentially turn West Haven into a place where you train policemen so they can go somewhere else for a real pension later on. And you know that that's been happening to the point where they changed the law so that they said if you train a policeman and they go within 2 years to another city, the other city has to pay the post costs. Well, the only thing that did was delay the police moving to another city by a couple years. So for those two reasons, I think, going along with what the previous speaker just said, having some numbers to back that up would be extremely helpful.
Attorney Tiernan, can you just clarify the effective date of the DCP?
The effective date of what?
You are no longer muted.
Or approximately? I'm under the impression in reviewing the contract that that's an old provision. Am I correct on that?
I will defer to Attorney Hodgson on that, if he's still on the call.
Thank you.
He may not still be on the call.
Oh, sorry, no, I'm on.
Oh.
I'm on.
Okay.
The effective date of the defined contribution plan,
Yes,
was
sir.
that the question?
Yes, sir.
2013.
Okay. So that particular provision is not one of the changes that the TA is incorporating. Now, I understand that one or more members are questioning whether that's in the best interest from a long-term perspective, but just kind of focusing us back to the TA and the provisions at hand, I hear discussion from a number of members that suggests that the benefit, if you will, the 2% and the switch to the state partnership plan, the stipends, et cetera, relative to the other areas that have not yet been evaluated for concession, if you will, is certainly not a comprehensive approach. And so I want to hold on the DCP conversation, and if the board wants some analysis to evaluate that in a separate conversation, happy to entertain that. But the discussion I've heard thus far is indicating that relative to your level of financial distress, relative to other TA for the firefighters and other municipalities, relative to the financial challenges of the fire departments in West Haven, the mill rate, that what we have in front of us could be more comprehensive. I'm going to just open it up one more time for discussion, and in case anyone else wants to weigh in or correct anything that I just stated. And otherwise, I would like to entertain a motion.
Listen, I have one comment.
Secretary Christine Shaw.
Okay,
I think I heard.
Go ahead, Ms. Shaw.
We muted.
Oh, just a technical question. Given that there's, I believe there's consensus that
You've been muted. To unmute yourself, press *6.
tentative agreement. Can this matter be referred to the subcommittee for to address the questions that were raised here before the full MARB takes action?
That's what I was going to say. Aren't we out of time?
Ms. Shaw, the 44 days
Yeah.
equates to August 28th. So if there were questions that we felt would be helpful to engage in the subcommittee discussion, that could occur as long as MARB is able to take action by August 28th. If we take no action, then the TA would be an effective proof.
No, there's a time frame.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Was that Mr. Felsigno that I heard?
The council approved it, though.
Yeah.
Doesn't
It's
matter.
Chris Hodgson, I just had a comment about the partnership.
Yes. Go right ahead, Chris.
That it appeared in the locked-in analysis that this year, that this group had a favorable claims experience. So the city looked pretty good with the high deductible health plan this year, but going forward, I think historically the rates for the state partnership plan have been lower than what you would have for a high deductible health plan with the required contribution to the HSA plus the premium cost to the city. So I think going forward that when we talk about what's the best health plan to be in, we've been banking on the fact that the state partnership plan is going to keep their rate stable, that the state's going to continue to help that plan, and that with the rest of the city unions, and it made sense to move this union in. And again, if the
5-year plan called for 2% increase. We did not think we were going outside the bounds of what this board wanted from us. So thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, sir. Any other discussion?
Christine, it's Mark again, just for the last time. First of all, you can't compare this to the teachers because teachers have a different clause in their contract, an equal to or better than clause, which allows them, should they want to unilaterally put them in, I believe. But that said, let me make myself perfectly clear. And I think the Secretary stated it as well. There are issues in this contract that need to be addressed outside of the partnership plan, period. That should be addressed in the next upcoming negotiations, which is to happen next year. What we are being asked to do, I have no problem with the 2%, the salaries, etc. Let's say I have no problem. Right now I have no problem because it's consistent with other settlements. What I have a problem with is you're delaying the ability to look at existing language outside of that are causing stress on the community. And I agree with Sal, there's nothing wrong in the next negotiations with revisiting the DC versus DV plan. We don't get an opportunity to do that for another year. We don't get an opportunity to define what retirement means or vacation days, which is totally contradictory in the contract. This contract, as I see it, is filled with holes. And what you're doing is kicking the can down the road, as Mr. White said, for another year before we have the opportunity to address it. If the city comes to this board, not today, because there's nothing preventing them to do a midterm and just says, we're going to do a straight swap, you're going to the defined benefit plan, and for a 14% increase beginning July 22, I'm a yes vote. I can't be a yes vote now because you put on too many Christmas ornaments with this thing, and you're denying MARB the opportunity to address other situations, and even the town, with other conditions and situations within the existing collective bargaining agreement. That's my objection. If I'm a union member, to be perfectly honest, the defined benefit plan, I think Sal would agree, the state partnership plan is far better for me as an individual than the high deductible plan. So why as a union would I say, I'm not going to take it until you give me something else? If they choose to do that as a union, shame on them. But as a union advocate, if you're going to replace a plan such as a state plan with a high deductible plan, I'm the first in line. So I don't think you need, and I may be wrong, but in West Haven, things could be different. You're trying to say that in order to get the state plan, we have to give them additional incentives. I'm saying that those additional incentives are too expensive for the state plan, which they should be taking willingly. So that's my rationale and my reasoning behind the vote.
Okay, very good. I'm afraid to say it, but any other discussion? All right. Okay, so therefore, is there a motion to approve the tentative agreement for Allington Firefighters Local 1198? Is there anyone who wants to move that motion? Okay, just to be very clear, okay, very good. So there's no motion for approval. Is there anyone who wants to move a motion to reject the tentative agreement for Allington Firefighters Local 1198?
I'll make that motion. This is Mark. Grudgingly, I'll make that motion.
Okay, Mr. Waxenberg has moved the motion. Is there a second?
Bob White, second.
Okay, so the motion has been properly moved and seconded. It's a motion to reject the tentative agreement for Allington Firefighters Local 1198. Is there any discussion? Okay, seeing none.
Yes, Christine Shaw.
Okay,
question.
Ms. Shaw?
Sorry. So, if the motion to reject prevails, is there an opportunity for the additional questions to be addressed and for MARB to reconsider, or does that, or does the clock run out?
According to CGS 7-474B, if the PA is rejected, the matter shall be returned to the parties for further bargaining.
Or not.
Thank you.
This is Matthew Brockman. Can I ask a question for if it was rejected, do we believe the parties are coming back with an agreement in the near future?
City of West Haven, can you answer that?
This is Chris Hodgson.
You are no longer muted.
That we would go back to the union to discuss this.
This is
I don't know.
Salvatano.
Each agreement.
Yeah, this is Salvatano.
Mr. Attorney Hobson, I missed the last part of your remarks there, your response there, sir.
My immediate reaction is we would go back to the union. I don't know if we would reach another agreement.
Okay.
Salvatano, can I? Yeah. I just have a concern because it sounds like the city is going to have no direction going back to the union because I think people may reject this for different reasons, and that gives the city kind of nowhere to go. You know, my concern again is the pension may cost a lot more money, and it would be good to have that information. But I don't think that's why Mark or Bob White are thinking of voting it down. And so I think that makes it difficult for the city because they have no direction.
Great.
That is Bob White.
Go ahead.
I agree with Sal. I think we do need to give direction. I think my concern is the additional year. I think there needs to be a comprehensive review. My suspicion is it can't be done under this reopener. So that whatever the people at the table can agree to, whether they go to the partnership plan or don't go to the partnership plan, at least the thing that bothers me is the 1-year extension.
Okay, Bob, I heard you say that a more comprehensive 4-year plan, so the duration of the contract and comprehensively addressing other areas of the contract is what I'm hearing you say. Is that correct?
No, I think that should happen. I don't think it can happen in this reopener. I think it ought to be on the table when it's renegotiated 2022. So I guess my suggestion to the negotiators, following up on what Sal said, which I think is very valid, is that the objective piece is for 1 year. The 1 year extension.
Okay. Well, let me go on record with my positions. I believe that the City of West Haven should take a more comprehensive approach to addressing some of the contractual provisions in here that contribute to their challenges. Looking at retiree health as an area, and certainly leave payouts that do not appear to have been addressed at this time. I believe that consistent with Mark's representation, that switching to the partnership plan is a positive for the union,
Sure.
Along with the general wage increase, that there was an opportunity to have movement in some of the other areas that I mentioned. And so for that reason, for me, it's not holistic and balanced. In terms of my position on the types of items that I would like to see, that statement reflects my thoughts. Mark, do you care to clarify any of your remarks?
Yes, I think just to say, if the negotiations resulted in simply a swap, for lack of a better term, of the high-deductible health care plan with the state partnership plan for the remainder of this contract, with the continuation of the existing premium share, I would be the first in line to vote yes for it. Because, and I agree with Bob White and Sal, we need to look at a comprehensive overview when official quote-unquote negotiations begin. I think for Attorney Hodgkins, is it, to try to negotiate all of the areas that are of concern to me and others would be too problematic. So for me, my message is if you can just swap out the high deductible plan with the state partnership plan with that one paragraph in there, even though I don't like the reversion of the PPO, I don't even, personally speaking, that would be enough for me to vote yes, and the existing contract stay in its existence. If the union can't agree, then I would wait until full negotiations occur and get it through those negotiations and/or arbitration.
Okay. Very good. We have discussion on the record that gives clarity to the City of West Haven. Is there any other discussion? Okay. The motion that we are going to vote on by roll call is a motion to reject the tentative agreement. And Julian, over to you.
Mr. White?
Yes, to reject.
You've been muted. To unmute yourself, press *6.
Mr. Biller?
Yes.
Mr. Luciano?
Yes on the motion.
Now you can do the cost analysis of administering.
Mr. Brockman?
Yes.
I'm not kidding.
Ms. Shaw?
Oh, yeah.
No, he's on mute.
Everything's getting picked up.
I'm sorry, could you repeat your vote, Christine?
Well, is in favor of the motion to reject. So
Thank
yes
you.
on rejection.
Thank you. And Secretary McCaw?
Yes to reject.
That's everybody.
Okay, very good. Well, many thanks to all of you. This is a engaged and passionate conversation, and I appreciate the remarks on both sides, both the MARB and the town, and remain confident that you will make progress. And certainly, the MARB is here for you to seek any input beyond today's discussion. And you can reach out through Julian, and we can certainly add an agenda item if you need further clarification. With that, we have no other business. So is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved.
Great.
So moved.
And excellent. It's been moved. Anyone going to second for me?
I'll second.
David Miller, second.
David Miller, second. Excellent. Thank you all. Have a great day.